It all went wrong the day our father, the Duke of Griffin, died.
Nostalgia is a fickle thing. It can make you look back at something and see it as something that it really wasn't, or look at something recent and expect it to hold up to a standard that is just impossible. This is Heroes of Might and Magic for me, and is what led to me checking out this game. Heroes of Might and Magic 6 is the second stab at this venerated series by Ubisoft, developed for PC by Black Hole, and has been a real disappointment for me. How so, I hear you ask? Well, there are times where this thing just got so boring that I just stopped playing and only ended up playing just over 2 hours of it. Now, first things first, the biggest problem with this game is this. Yes, this is a retail copy of the game, so you're probably wondering, how is this an issue? Aside from Uplay, simple. They don't fucking work. I bought this thing twice from my EB Games, and both times it didn't work. The patcher would run, but would fail to connect to the Uplay servers, and thus, the game would refuse to fucking play. In the end, I ended up buying this game a third time on Steam when it was on sale, and thankfully, the patching process of Steam circumvented this game's patcher. If you decide to check this game out, for the love of God, avoid the retail copies like the plague and get it through Steam, or even just pirate it. Right, now that's out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty of this thing. For those who don't know, what makes the Heroes series differ from the main RPG series is a turn-based strategy game that makes use of RPG-style character progression with some elements of 4X strategy thrown in for good measure. Aside from a perspective shift and the addition of a grid in combat, gameplay is more or less identical to what we got in Heroes 3, which isn't a bad thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. For combat, your armies have limited spaces and are made up of unit stacks, individuals that represent groups of units, and the more units in a stack, the greater its attack power and the longer it can last. Strategy really boils down to dividing these stacks for maneuverability in battle, while also maintaining a solid variety of units with different abilities. Not a bad setup, but the big issue is that while this isn't inherently bad, the combat is so slow that it gets real boring real fast. So whatever depth the combat system has from copying the classic games combat is undermined by the sheer fact you'll most likely want to stop playing just after an hour or so. There are some new elements to combat like unit morale and critical hits, and while these are welcome additions, they just aren't enough, since the slow pace kills whatever excitement can come from pulling together a last-ditch strategy that narrowly wins you the fight. Aside from the slow pace, there is also quite the bugbear that undermines whatever fun the combat can have: the grid. As I said before, this isn't a bad idea. God knows the combat in Heroes 3 could get annoying because you couldn't accurately tell where your units were moving. The issue is that the grid they put into this game can be a temperamental dickhead. If you choose to give this game a go, watch out, because it's pretty common to click on a square to move a unit, only to find out you were just 1 pixel too close to the neighbouring square, and now your masterful strategy is up shit creek and the canoe is flipped over. If these issues weren't present, the combat would actually be pretty good, but as it is, it's solid but underwhelming. The 4X elements don't fare much better either. For whatever reason, Ubisoft decided to streamline them, and it just makes the game feel dumbed down rather than more refined. Usually how this works is you seize control of a location, and now it's officially part of your empire, and all resources it produces. That's not the case here. If you seize an enemy structure, you're simply diverting whatever resources it produces for your empire, so long as your army occupies it. So if you want to keep it, you need to conquer whatever settlement it's affiliated with. Said settlements are also the only places where you can reinforce your worn out armies, which means if you want a strong force to defeat your enemies, I hope you like to run back and forth. Settlement management has been left unchanged, which is nice, and the artwork used to portray them is actually pretty good to look at, but aside from managing resources to fund building structures, there isn't any economic challenge to it. Unit upkeep, as far as I could tell, just isn't a part of this game. Without it, a dimension of challenge has been denied for this, and it makes it feel all the more like it's been needlessly dumbed down. The Gold Edition of this game also comes with the first 2 expansions, the Danse Macabre and Pirates of the Savage Sea, and unlike the main game, these were made by Limbic Entertainment and they just feel more amateurishly made. Danse Macabre just packs its starting map with shit tons of enemies of varying strengths and needlessly handicaps unit production for the sake of a challenge. Sure, there is a narrative reason for this, but I wouldn't be railing against this if there was an indication that this situation was going to change as you progress through the first map, but it doesn't, and thanks to the presence of tougher enemies and the slower unit production, you're just left even more bored than in the main game. As a whole, this game isn't bad, but it's not particularly good either. The main game has solid ideas, but never really goes the extra mile needed to be anything other than average, largely thanks to its aggressively slow pace. And while the first 2 expansions are a different kettle of chips, they look and feel like they were made by a more amateurish team of developers that you can just feel free to skip. I can't recommend this to anyone unless you're curious to get an idea on how badly Ubisoft has screwed the series up, but really you're better off checking out some much better strategy games like Age of Wonders 3 or the HD re-release of Age of Empires 2. I'd recommend checking those out over this any day of the week. Awesome, thanks for watching. It feels nice to finally get this video out. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. If you really like it, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. And for game reviews this month, it's Yakuza 0 and Berserk and the Band of the Hawk. I've also got some movie reviews in the pipeline, so stick around for those.